My name is Ashley Thompson, and I'm 28 years old. The country house my grandmother Nora left me wasn't just property, it was 5 acres of memories, a farmhouse with a soul. 90 minutes from the city where I could breathe. I never imagined my own family would try to take it from me. I certainly never planned to sell my inheritance behind their backs. But when betrayal comes from those who should protect you, sometimes drastic choices are the only ones left. Before I tell you how I secretly sold my inheritance right under my family's nose, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and hit subscribe if you want more stories about standing up for yourself when family crosses the line. Growing up in Lexington, a comfortable suburb outside Boston, I was raised in what looked like a typical middle-class American family. Our colonial-style house, with its neat lawn and hydrangea bushes, perfectly matched my parents' carefully constructed image. But appearances can be deceiving. My mother, Karen, with her perfectly highlighted hair and country club membership, ruled our household with manipulative precision. She had mastered the art of making demands sound like suggestions and criticisms feel like concern. Her favorite pastime? Reminding me how my younger sister Megan needed extra support. Extra attention, extra everything, because Megan was sensitive and special. My father James existed primarily as an extension of my mother's will. A financial advisor who spent his days helping others make decisions, he rarely made any of his own at home. "Ask your mother" became his mantra. His shoulders perpetually shrugged in surrender to Karen's authority. On the rare occasions he showed backbone, it lasted only until my mother's disapproving stare crumbled his resolve. Then there was Megan, my sister, 3 years younger, and somehow entitled to the moon and stars. While I worked part-time jobs since 16, Megan's delicate nature meant she needed to focus on her studies. When I got a scholarship that covered half my college tuition, I still graduated with loans. When Megan decided on an expensive private university, my parents somehow found the money for her full ride. The pattern was established early and never changed. Megan needed, Megan received. Ashley worked, Ashley understood. My grandmother Nora was the counterbalance to this dynamic. Mom's mother, ironically enough, was nothing like her daughter. Grandma Nora lived in a farmhouse in western Massachusetts, where she'd moved after my grandfather died. She was self-sufficient, practical, and fair to her core. "And fix a leaking sink. You need to know how to stand on your own 2 feet, Ashley," she'd say. "No one should determine your worth but you." The country house itself was a reflection of Grandma Nora, unpretentious but solid, with character in every corner. Originally built in the 1920s, the 2-story farmhouse sat on 5 acres of land that included an apple orchard, a wildflower meadow, and a small pond. The wraparound porch with its creaky swing was where Grandma and I would shell peas in summer, wrapped in quilts during fall, watching thunderstorms roll across the hills. Inside, the kitchen featured the original farmhouse sink and a wood-burning stove that Grandma refused to replace despite my mother's complaints about its outdatedness. Upstairs, 3 bedrooms nestled under sloped ceilings, with windows that caught the morning light through branches of an ancient maple tree. My summers at Grandma's house were salvation. While my parents took Megan to exclusive camps or European vacations to expand her horizons, I was shipped off to the country. What they viewed as a convenient childcare arrangement became my annual rebirth. Grandma taught me to respect the land, myself, and others in that order. "This place has stories in its walls. Remember that, Ashley." During my college years at UMass Amherst, the farmhouse became my weekend refuge. When my roommate situation imploded sophomore year, Grandma let me live with her and commute. After graduation, when I took my first marketing job in Boston, the house remained my monthly escape from city pressure. When Grandma Nora passed away during my 26th year, I was devastated. The funeral was a blur of tears and casseroles. It wasn't until the reading of the will that I understood the depth of her love. Grandma had left the farmhouse and all 5 acres to me, only me, with a letter explaining why. "Ashley," her letter read, "you understand what this place means beyond its market value. You've worked alongside me, your hands in this soil, your care in these walls. This house is already yours in all the ways that matter, so now I'm making it official. Live here, love here. Or someday pass it along to someone who will honor it as you have. The choice will be yours alone. My parents were visibly shocked at the reading. Mom's tight smile couldn't hide her displeasure. Well, that's interesting, she said, her tone suggesting it was anything but. Dad patted my shoulder with a distracted congratulations, while Megan didn't even bother hiding her annoyance. Great, you got a house in the middle of nowhere, she sniffed. What am I supposed to do with that? The lawyer, Mr. Patterson, who'd been Grandma's friend for decades, made the terms crystal clear. The property is deeded exclusively to Ashley, with no encumbrances or conditions. It's hers to do with as she wishes. For the next 2 years, I balanced my life between my apartment in Boston, where I worked as a marketing coordinator, and weekend trips to the farmhouse. I started a renovation fund, planning to eventually replace the roof and update the ancient plumbing. Every spare dollar went into that account, with dreams of someday moving there permanently and perhaps starting a small business, maybe a nursery or a retreat center. The farmhouse represented not just my past, but my future. Then came the phone call that would change everything. Ashley, we need to have a family meeting this Sunday, Mom announced one Tuesday evening. Prime beef was the prelude to difficult conversations, as if protein could soften the blow of whatever manipulation was coming. Still, I agreed to drive to Lexington that weekend, unaware that my relationship with my family was about to fundamentally change. The drive to my parents' house that Sunday felt longer than usual. Your hair. She reached to touch my shoulder-length brown hair, frowning slightly. We really should get you an appointment with my stylist. Before I could respond, Dad appeared with a drink in hand. There's my girl. Bourbon and ginger. I accepted the drink, knowing I'd need it, and followed them to the back patio where Megan lounged in designer sunglasses, scrolling through her phone. She glanced up briefly. Hey, she said, then returned to her screen. Dinner proceeded with the usual family dynamic. Mom dominated the conversation. Dad occasionally inserted a question about everyone's drink levels, and I provided the appropriate responses to Mom's rhetorical questions. Isn't it amazing how quickly Megan's moving up in her career? Mom beamed. Absolutely, I replied, cutting my steak with perhaps more force than necessary. The networking skills in this one. Mom continued, squeezing Megan's shoulder. She just knows how to make the right connections. Megan finally put her phone down as dessert arrived. So, can we talk about the thing now? I have plans later. Mom's expression shifted to what I called her serious business face. Dad suddenly became very interested in rearranging the salt and pepper shakers. Yes. Let's move to the living room, shall we? This is an important family discussion. I felt my stomach tighten as we relocated to the formal living room, another bad sign, as this space was reserved for significant announcements and confrontations. We each took our usual positions, Mom and Dad on the sofa, Megan in the armchair. As you know, Megan has accepted that wonderful position downtown. Dad nodded encouragingly. Very prestigious firm. The commute from here would be impossible, Mom continued. And as you know, Boston real estate is just astronomical these days. Even rentals are outrageous. I saw where this was heading but remained silent, letting them reach their point without my help. The thing is, Megan interjected, impatience overriding the script. I need an apartment downtown, close to the office. Something nice in Beacon Hill or Back Bay. Mom shot her a look before smoothing her expression. We've been looking at options, and even the smallest suitable places are simply out of reach right now. Which is why Dad finally contributed, clearing his throat. We've been thinking about family resources and how we can support each other. Family resources? I repeated, my voice flat. Well, honey. Mom leaned forward, her eyes taking on that manipulative sparkle. You have that country house just sitting there. You only visit occasionally, and it's really too much for one person anyway. What your mother is saying, Dad jumped in, is that if you sold the farmhouse, there would be more than enough money to purchase a nice apartment for Megan. They wanted me to sell my grandmother's house, my house, to buy Megan an expensive downtown apartment. You can't be serious, I finally managed. It's the sensible solution, Mom insisted. This is about what's fair for the family. Grandma's decision wasn't balanced. This would help rectify that situation. Fair. The word felt like acid on my tongue. How is it fair to ask me to give up my inheritance for Megan's convenience? Don't be so selfish, Megan snapped. You always do this. Act like you're the victim when you're just being difficult. This isn't about being difficult, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. Grandma left me the house because she knew how much it meant to me. It's not just property, it's her legacy. A legacy that should benefit the whole family, Mom insisted, her mask of reasonableness slipping. You've always been so self-centered, Ashley. Always thinking about what you want instead of what's best for everyone. Dad shifted uncomfortably. What your mother means is that families support each other. We've always done everything for both of you girls equally. The blatant lie nearly made me laugh. Equally? Dad, you paid for Megan's entire education while I'm still paying off student loans. You bought her a car while I saved for 3 years for mine. How is any of that equal? Here we go again with the martyrdom. Megan rolled her eyes. Just because you choose to struggle doesn't mean I should have to. No one's asking you to struggle, Mom interjected sharply. We're simply asking you to consider what Grandma would have wanted. She would want to support the whole family. Don't you dare tell me what Grandma would have wanted, I said, standing up. She specifically left the house to me, with clear instructions in her will. Legal technicalities, Mom waved dismissively. We're talking about moral obligations here. My moral obligation is to honor her wishes, I replied. And her wish was for me to have the house. I'm not selling it. Mom's expression hardened. I think you need to reconsider your position. This isn't just about you. You're right, it's not, I agreed. It's about respecting Grandma's decisions and the fact that the house is legally mine. I'm not selling it to buy Megan an apartment she could afford herself if she lived within her means like everyone else has to. How dare you? Megan shot to her feet. Just because you're jealous of my success. Success? I laughed incredulously. You just graduated and haven't worked a day in your life. What success are you talking about? That's enough. Dad finally intervened, his face flushed. Ashley, just think about it, okay? That's all we're asking. There's nothing to think about, I replied, grabbing my purse. The house is mine. And I'm keeping it. End of discussion. I left without saying goodbye, my hands shaking as I started my car. During the drive home, my phone buzzed repeatedly with texts from my family. Mom, I'm very disappointed in your attitude. Call me when you're ready to discuss this rationally. Dad, your mother is upset. Please reconsider. Megan, you've always been so selfish. This is why no one likes you. I silenced my phone and focused on driving, tears blurring my vision. By the time I reached my apartment, I had 7 missed calls and 15 text messages, each more manipulative than the last. Over the next week, the pressure intensified. My parents enlisted extended family members to call me aunts, uncles. Even cousins I barely spoke to, all suddenly concerned about family harmony and how I was creating conflict by not doing what's right. Aunt Judith, Mom's sister. Uncle Robert suggested that perhaps I didn't understand the financial implications and offered to explain why selling made logical sense. My cousin Diane, who hadn't spoken to me in years, each day brought new voices telling me I was wrong, selfish, unreasonable. Even my normally quiet father called daily, his voice increasingly stern as he reminded me of all we've done for you and how this was my chance to give back to the family. By the following weekend, my resolve was wavering under the constant barrage. Maybe I was being selfish. Maybe I should at least consider their proposal. The doubt crept in like fog, obscuring my certainty, making me question my own judgment. I decided to spend the weekend at the farmhouse to clear my head and reconnect with why the property mattered so much to me. That decision would change everything. The familiar gravel driveway of the farmhouse crunched under my tires as I arrived that Friday evening. Usually, the sight of the old maple trees and the weathered porch filled me with peace. Today, though, something felt wrong. As I approached the front door, I noticed subtle differences. The welcome mat was slightly askew, and the porch swing was positioned differently than how I'd left it. A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the April breeze. Someone had been here. Inside, more signs appeared. The throw blanket on the couch was folded differently. A kitchen cabinet I always left closed stood slightly ajar. The old wooden floors held footprints that weren't mine. I moved through the house like a detective, cataloging each discrepancy, each violation of my space. In the study, I found the first concrete evidence, a business card on the desk from Premier Properties with my mother's handwriting on the back. Ask about staging options. My hands trembled as I picked it up, disbelief warring with fury. They hadn't just been here, they'd brought a realtor. I checked the key hook by the back door where I kept the spare key. Empty. They must have made a copy when I'd left my keys at their house during Christmas dinner. The betrayal cut deep. They hadn't just ignored my wishes, they'd actively undermined them. Needing air, I stepped onto the back porch. That's when I saw it. Leaning against the garden shed was a for sale sign, ready to be planted in the front yard. The Premier Properties logo matched the business card perfectly. My legs nearly gave out as the full scope of their deception hit me. They weren't planning to persuade me, they were going to sell my house regardless of my decision. With shaking hands, "How dare you bring a realtor to my house without my permission?" A pause, then, "I see you're at the farmhouse." "Yes, I'm at MY House, where I found evidence that you've been showing it to realtors behind my back." "You made a copy of my key?" "A for sale sign, Mom." "Really?" "Don't be dramatic, Ashley. We're just exploring options. The market moves quickly, and we needed to be prepared once you came to your senses." "Came to my senses?" "This is illegal. You can't sell property you don't own." "Of course we weren't going to sell without the paperwork," she said dismissively. "But we needed to get the process started. Megan needs to secure an apartment before someone else takes it." "I don't care what Megan needs. This is my house." "This selfishness is exactly why we had to take matters into our own hands," she replied, her voice hardening. "You've always been difficult, Ashley. Always standing in the way of what's best for the family." "Best for the family?" I echoed incredulously. "You mean best for Megan?" "It's always been about Megan. Your sister has opportunities you couldn't even dream of. She needs our support. And I don't? I've supported myself since college while you've handed her everything. And now you want to take away the one thing that's mine. It's just a house, Ashley. An old, run-down house in the middle of nowhere." Her words stunned me into silence. Just a house? This place that held my grandmother's spirit, my happiest memories, my future dreams, reduced to nothing in her eyes. "We're done here," I finally said. "I want my key back. And if you ever trespass on my property again, I'll call the police." "Don't be ridiculous." I hung up, my whole body trembling with anger. Within minutes, my phone exploded with notifications. Dad called 3 times. Megan sent a barrage of texts calling me selfish and dramatic. But the final straw came when I opened Instagram to distract myself and saw Megan's latest post. A selfie in front of a gleaming high-rise with the caption, "Excited about moving to my new downtown apartment soon. Dreams coming true. Back Bay living new chapter." She was already planning her move into an apartment she expected to be purchased with my inheritance. The audacity was breathtaking. I sank onto the porch steps, tears streaming down my face as the weight of betrayal crushed me. The farmhouse had always been my safe haven, and now even that sanctity had been violated. Through the open kitchen window, I spent that night curled up in Grandma's bed, surrounded by her quilts, crying until no tears remained. By morning, I felt hollow, emptied of emotion. I moved through the house like a ghost. As the morning light streamed through the windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air, a memory surfaced. Grandma standing firm against my mother's demands about selling some family jewelry. "Your mother thinks everything has a price," Grandma had told me afterward. "She doesn't understand that some things have value precisely because they can't be bought or sold." Another memory followed, Grandma teaching me to prune the apple trees, her weathered hands demonstrating the precise angle of the cut. "Sometimes," she'd said, "you have to cut away what you love to help it grow stronger. The hardest cuts often lead to the best fruit." as I stared into my coffee cup, watching the light play across its surface. Understanding dawned. My family would never stop. If I refused to sell now, they'd find another way to pressure me, to manipulate me, to take what I valued. They'd already proven they had no respect for my boundaries or property. The house itself was now tainted by their intrusion. Every time I walked through the door, I'd wonder if they'd been there. He greeted me warmly. "How are you holding up?" "Not great," I admitted. "I need some legal advice. My parents are trying to force me to sell the house to buy my sister an apartment. They've even been showing it to realtors without my permission." His shock was evident even through the phone. "They have absolutely no right to do that. The property is solely yours." Nora was very specific about that. "I know. And I think I need to sell it. But on my terms, not theirs." "I see," he said carefully. "If that's your decision, I can certainly help ensure everything is handled properly. But Ashley, are you sure? Your grandmother wanted you to have this place because she knew how much it meant to you." I looked around the kitchen, at the worn countertops where Grandma and I had kneaded bread, at the height marks on the doorframe tracking my growth through childhood summers. "The house meant everything to me," I said, my voice breaking. "But Grandma meant more. And she wouldn't want this place to be a source of pain and conflict. She'd want me to be free." After a long pause, Mr. Patterson said, "Nora would be proud of your clarity. Even if the decision breaks your heart. If you're certain, I'll help you through this process." I took a deep breath. "I'm certain. But I need to do this quietly, without my family knowing until it's done." "I understand," he replied. "And I know just the real estate agent who can help. Someone discreet, who worked with your grandmother years ago. Someone who will respect the property and find buyers who will love it." As I hung up, I felt something shift inside me, a burden lifting, replaced by resolve. This wouldn't be a surrender. It would be my declaration of independence. Monday morning found me sitting across from Diane Winters, the real estate agent Mr. Patterson had recommended. Her office in Northampton was deliberately chosen to be far from my parents' usual circles. With silver-streaked hair and kind eyes behind stylish glasses, she reminded me slightly of my grandmother, practical but warm. "So," she said after I'd explained my situation, "you want to sell quickly and confidentially. I can certainly help with that. Established orchard, we're looking at significantly more than what most people realize." The figure she circled made my eyes widen. It was nearly double what I'd assumed the property was worth, and certainly more than whatever lowball figure my parents were planning to accept in their haste to appease Megan. "That's substantial," I managed. "Rural properties with character don't come on the market often," Diane explained. "And yours has been lovingly maintained. Your grandmother knew quality." We spent the next hour developing a strategy. Since speed and confidentiality were priorities, Diane suggested a limited marketing approach, no public listings. Just direct outreach to qualified buyers she knew were looking for exactly this type of property. "I'll need to take photos and measurements today, if possible," she said. "Then we can have it ready for private showings by the end of the week." "I need to change the locks first," I told her. "My family has a key." She nodded without judgment. "Smart move." And professional photos capturing its charm in the golden hour light. I spent the evening making small repairs, fixing the squeaky step, touching up paint. It would be about reclaiming my autonomy and honoring Grandma's legacy in a new way. I created spreadsheets dividing the potential proceeds into categories. 1. Investment portfolio for long-term security. 2. Down payment fund for a small cabin in Vermont. 3. Donation to the local historical society in Grandma's name. 4. Emergency fund. 5. Student loan payoff. The planning process was cathartic, turning a painful decision into a pathway toward freedom. For the first time since the family meeting, I felt in control again. Over the next week, Diane brought 4 potential buyers through the property while I was at work. Each evening, she called with updates, describing the visitors and their reactions. The little girl immediately ran to the apple trees and asked if she could climb them. The mother is an artist who fell in love with the light in the upstairs bedroom. Currently living in an apartment in Amherst where he teaches environmental science at the college. She sells her paintings at local galleries. They want their kids to grow up with space to explore, the way they both did. They were particularly touched by the height markings on the kitchen door frame. They asked if those could stay. Tears welled in my eyes. They sound perfect. They're not the highest offer, Diane cautioned. The developer is offering $15,000 more. I don't care, I said immediately. I want the Johnsons to have it. The next day, we accepted their offer slightly above asking price, with a letter explaining why they loved the house and what they planned to do with it. They requested a quick closing, which aligned perfectly with my needs. The process moved with surprising speed. The Johnsons' financing was pre-approved. The inspection revealed only minor issues that I agreed to address, and the appraisal came in right at the sale price. Mr. Patterson helped expedite the paperwork, and within 3 weeks, we were scheduling a closing date. Throughout this whirlwind, I maintained absolute secrecy. At work, I took personal calls in the stairwell. I told no friends, knowing how information could leak back to my family through social connections. I continued my normal routines, even driving to the farmhouse on weekends, but staying at a nearby B&B instead, maintaining appearances while the sale progressed. My family, meanwhile, continued their campaign of manipulation. Mom called daily with new arguments about why I should do the right thing. Dad sent emails with links to apartments in Back Bay, suggesting how perfect they would be for Megan. Megan herself oscillated between cold silence and angry texts accusing me of holding her future hostage. I deflected with non-committal responses. I'm still thinking about it, or I need more time to consider all the implications. Each evasion brought me another day closer to closing. The final walkthrough with the Johnsons happened on a perfect spring afternoon. I arranged to be there, wanting to meet the family who would care for Grandma's house. Emily Johnson, with paint-stained fingers and a warm smile, immediately hugged me. "Thank you for choosing us," she said. "We promise to love this place as much as you clearly have." Her husband Mark shook my hand firmly. "We're honored to be the next caretakers of this special property." Their children, Sophie, age 8, and Ethan. "There's something I'd like to give you," I told Emily, retrieving a box from the attic. Inside were Grandma's gardening journals, documenting 30 years of what grew best where, when to plant, which trees needed extra care. "She would want you to have these." Emily's eyes welled with tears as she accepted the box. "This is priceless." "Thank you." As they left, promising to send photos as they settled in, I walked through the empty house one last time. In each room, I said a silent goodbye, not just to the space, but to the chapter of my life it represented. Patterson's office, signing the final papers. The weight of the cashier's check in my hand afterward felt surreal, the physical manifestation of a difficult choice. "You've handled this with remarkable grace," Mr. Patterson told me. "Nora would be proud." "I hope so," I said, tucking the check into my bag. "Because now comes the hard part. Whatever happened next, I would face it on my own terms." Sunday arrived with ominous dark clouds gathering on the horizon, appropriate weather for the storm I was about to unleash. I dressed carefully in a simple blue dress and my grandmother's silver bracelet, drawing strength from its familiar weight against my wrist. The drive to my parents' house felt different this time. Mom answered the door with a triumphant smile. "Ashley, perfect timing. Your father just opened a bottle of champagne." "Champagne?" I asked, stepping inside. "We have wonderful news," she said, leading me to the living room where Dad was pouring bubbly into flutes while Megan texted on her phone, feet propped on the coffee table. "There she is," Dad said, handing me a glass. "Just in time for the celebration." "What are we celebrating?" I asked, though I already suspected. Mom's smile widened. "We found the perfect buyer for the farmhouse. Premier Properties called yesterday. A developer is interested and willing to move quickly. All cash offer, no inspection needed. Isn't that marvelous?" I set the untouched champagne on the side table. "There seems to be some confusion." "What do you mean?" Mom frowned. "The house isn't for sale through Premier Properties. I never listed it with them." Dad cleared his throat. "Well, we took the initiative to get the ball rolling. The paperwork can be sorted out now that you're being reasonable." I'm not being reasonable, I said calmly. I'm being factual. Premier Properties has no authority to sell my house. This stubbornness is getting tiresome, Mom snapped, her celebratory mask slipping. We found a solution that works for everyone. The developer is offering enough to buy Megan's apartment with money left over for you. It's more than fair. Stop being difficult, Mom hissed. This is happening, Ashley. The sooner you cooperate, the smoother it will go. I took a deep breath. You're right that a sale has happened. But not with your developer. The room went silent. 3 pairs of eyes fixed on me with varying degrees of confusion. What are you talking about? Dad finally asked. I sold the farmhouse 3 days ago. The new owners have already taken possession. The champagne flute slipped from Mom's hand, shattering against the hardwood floor. No one moved to clean it up. That's impossible, she whispered. It's not only possible, it's done. Signed, sealed, and legally recorded at the Registry of Deeds. I pulled out my phone, showing them the confirmation email from Mr. Patterson with the recording information. You can't do that, Megan stammered, her face draining of color. I can, and I did. It was my house. My decision. Mom recovered first, her shock transforming instantly to rage. How dare you go behind our backs? After everything we've discussed, after all the plans we made. Plans you made. I corrected. Without my consent. Using a key you took without permission to show my house to realtors while I wasn't there. We were trying to help you make the right decision. Mom shouted. No, you were trying to control me as usual. You didn't care what I wanted or what Grandma intended when she left me the property. Dad stepped forward, his face ashen. Ashley, what have you done? This is a family matter that required family consultation. Family consultation? I laughed bitterly. Was it family consultation when you made a copy of my key without asking? When you brought realtors through my house without my knowledge? When you planted a for sale sign in my shed, ready to stake your claim? That was different, he muttered. How? How was it different? Because we're your parents. Mom interjected. We know what's best for this family. You know what's best for Megan, I corrected. You've always known what's best for Megan. The rest of us just have to fall in line. Megan jumped to her feet. This is so typical. You've always been jealous of me. Always trying to make me look bad. This isn't about you, Megan, I said wearily. It's about autonomy and respect, concepts this family doesn't seem to understand. Who did you sell it to? Dad asked, his voice hollow. And for how much? A lovely family with 2 children who will cherish it the way it deserves to be cherished. And for considerably more than your developer was offering. Mom's eyes narrowed. How much more? That's not relevant. It is if you expect us to find another solution for Megan's apartment. I stared at her, incredulous. You still don't get it, do you? I'm not buying Megan an apartment. The money from the sale is mine. You selfish. Ungrateful, Mom's words dissolved into incoherence as she paced the room. After everything we've done for you. What exactly have you done for me, Mom? Seriously, I want to know. Because from where I'm standing, I've been on my own since college while you've handed Megan everything on a silver platter. That's not true. Dad protested weakly. It is true, I insisted. You paid for her education while I took loans. You bought her a car while I saved for mine. You funded her unpaid internships while I worked 2 jobs to make rent. And now you expected me to give up my inheritance to buy her a luxury apartment she hasn't earned. I deserved those things. Megan shouted, tears streaming down her face. Because I've never understood. No one answered. The silence stretched, punctuated only by Megan's sobs and the tick of the grandfather clock in the corner. Finally, Mom spoke. When you've calmed down and realized what you've thrown away, not just the house, but your family's trust, you'll come crawling back for forgiveness. I don't think I will, I said softly. Because for the first time in my life, I'm standing up for myself instead of giving in to keep the peace. And it feels right. Get out, Mom whispered. Get out of my house. I nodded, picking up my purse. For what it's worth, I'm sorry it came to this. I never wanted to hurt anyone. I just needed to protect myself when it became clear no one else would. But from the complex mixture of grief and liberation that comes from breaking unhealthy bonds, My phone immediately began buzzing with texts and calls, which I silenced as I drove away from my childhood home, unsure when or if I would return. Over the next few days, the fallout was exactly as expected. Asking if I was going through something or offering to mediate the family situation. Mom had always been skilled at controlling the narrative, and in her version, I was the ungrateful daughter who had betrayed her family out of spite. Distant relatives took sides, some supporting my parents' position that family resources should be shared, others defending my right to make my own decisions about my inheritance. The family WhatsApp group became a battlefield until I quietly removed myself from it. Dad sent a rambling email about disappointed expectations and the obligations of being part of a family. She showed up at my apartment unannounced, alternating between tearful pleas about how I'd destroyed her opportunity and cold accusations about my pathological need for attention. When neither worked, she threatened legal action, claiming she'd been promised the apartment proceeds. There's nothing to sue over, I told her calmly. The house was legally mine. I had every right to sell it. Mom and Dad said Grandma meant it for the family. Then they lied to you, like they've lied about many things. Read the will yourself if you don't believe me. She left in a fury, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the pictures on my wall. Through it all, I maintained a calm I hadn't known I possessed. Each accusation, each guilt trip that would have previously devastated me now bounced off a newfound resilience. I had done nothing wrong. I had protected what was mine from people who had proven they wouldn't respect my boundaries. The most surprising interaction came 3 weeks after the confrontation. I was leaving work when I found my father waiting beside my car, looking older and more tired than I'd ever seen him. "Can we talk?" he asked simply. We walked to a nearby cafe, ordering coffee in awkward silence before settling at a corner table. "Your mother doesn't know I'm here," he began, staring into his cup. She's still very angry." I figured as much. "I'm not here to change your mind or ask for money," he said, meeting my eyes briefly. "I just want to understand. Was it really that bad, growing up with us?" The unexpected vulnerability in his question caught me off guard. I considered my words carefully. "It wasn't all bad, Dad. There were good times, happy memories. But yes, the favoritism was that bad. Being constantly compared to Megan and found wanting. Having my needs dismissed while hers were prioritized. Being expected to be independent while she was coddled. But I didn't listen. She left you that house because she knew you deserved something that was just yours, something no one could take away. And then you tried to take it anyway." He winced. "Yes. I'm sorry, Ashley. Not for wanting to help Megan, she's my daughter too, but for how we went about it. The realtors, that was wrong." It wasn't a complete acknowledgement, but it was more than I'd expected. "Thank you for saying that." We talked for another hour, not solving anything but at least speaking honestly for perhaps the first time in our relationship. As we parted, he hugged me awkwardly. "I don't know if your mother will come around," he admitted. "But I'd like to stay in touch, if that's okay with you." "I'd like that," I said, surprised to find I meant it. As I drove home, I reflected on how different his approach had been from my mother's continued hostility and Megan's entitled rage. It wasn't reconciliation, exactly. But it was a small bridge across the chasm that had opened between us. That night, I realized I was finally ready to move forward with the next chapter of my life, one where I define my worth instead of seeking validation from those who had never been able to give it. The constant drama and guilt trips had consumed so much of my emotional energy that their absence left an unexpected void. In that space, however, the proceeds from the farmhouse sale sat in my account, representing both opportunity and responsibility. After careful research, I found a small cabin on 3 acres near the Vermont border, nothing as grand as Grandma's farmhouse, but with similar character and potential. Built in the 1950s with knotty pine walls and a stone fireplace, the cabin needed work but had good bones. At 800 square feet, it was just enough space for me, with a loft bedroom, open kitchen/living area, and a wide porch overlooking a stream that cut through the property. The surrounding woods offered privacy and peace, surprising myself with how right it felt. The cabin cost less than a third of what I'd received for the farmhouse, allowing me to set aside money for renovations, investments, and the charitable donation I'd planned in Grandma's name. I paid cash, completing the purchase with none of the family drama that had accompanied the farmhouse sale. Moving day arrived in early August, with just 2 friends helping load the small moving truck. I downsized significantly, keeping only what truly mattered to me. The transition felt symbolic, shedding the excess to focus on what was essential. As we unloaded boxes at the cabin, my friend Julia paused, looking around at the peaceful setting. "This place suits you," she said. "It feels like, I don't know, like it was waiting for you." That night, after my friends left, I sat alone on the porch with a glass of wine, releasing grief not just for the farmhouse, but for the family relationships I'd lost or changed by standing my ground. The tears felt cleansing rather than depleting. When they finally stopped, I looked up at the star-filled sky, so much brighter here than in the city, and whispered, "I think I'm going to be okay, Grandma." The renovation projects gave me purpose during those early days. I taught myself basic plumbing to fix the leaky bathroom sink. I refinished the worn hardwood floors, the repetitive sanding and staining becoming almost meditative. I painted the kitchen cabinets a cheerful blue that reminded me of Grandma's favorite teapot. Each completed task built not just a more comfortable home, but also my confidence. The woman who could replace a light fixture and patch drywall was stronger than she realized. 3 weeks after moving in, I received an unexpected text from my father. "How are you settling in?" It was tentative, an olive branch extended across the chasm. I sent back a photo of my newly painted kitchen with the simple caption, "Making it mine." He responded with a thumbs-up emoji and "Looks good. Your grandmother would approve." It wasn't reconciliation, but it was communication, the beginning of a new, more honest relationship. My mother maintained her silence, and Megan oscillated between angry texts and pointed social media posts about toxic family members and betrayal. I stopped following her accounts for my own peace of mind. As summer faded into autumn, I established new routines and traditions for myself. Sunday mornings were for hiking the trails behind my property. Wednesday evenings, I joined a community pottery class in the nearby town, finding unexpected joy in creating with my hands. I planted a small garden as Grandma had taught me, already planning what I would grow next spring. The hardest moment came in October, when I realized I had no family plans for Thanksgiving, the first major holiday since the rift. Rather than wallow in loneliness, I decided to host a friend-giving at the cabin, inviting colleagues and neighbors who might otherwise be alone. I've never hosted a holiday before, I admitted to my therapist during our weekly session. I'd started therapy shortly after the confrontation, recognizing I needed support to process the family dynamics and build healthier patterns. "What's the worst that could happen?" Dr. Chen asked. I laughed. "The turkey catches fire, everyone gets food poisoning, and I die alone and unloved?" She smiled. "And a more realistic scenario? It's a bit chaotic, not everything is perfect." Wine and genuine warmth. We ate at mismatched tables pushed together in the living room, the fireplace crackling cheerfully. The turkey was slightly overdone, the gravy lumpy, and a couple I'd met hiking who lived a few miles away. During dessert, neighbor Tom raised his glass in a toast to Ashley, who reminds us that family isn't just who you're born to, but who you choose to share your table with. The words struck a chord so deep I had to blink back tears. In creating this new gathering, I hadn't replaced what I'd lost. I found myself missing the farmhouse less acutely than before. This smaller space was becoming home, holding new memories alongside treasured keepsakes from my grandmother. On the mantel, her photo sat beside a pottery bowl I'd made, past and present in harmony. The first real test of my resolve came in early December when my father called. His sigh carried years of navigating between his wife's expectations and reality. "She's trying, Ashley. In her way." "What does that mean? Has she acknowledged any of what happened?" "Not in so many words, but she suggested we invite you." "That's something." I considered what Dr. Chin and I had discussed about boundaries versus isolation. I'm not ready for a full family Christmas, with everyone pretending nothing happened. But I'd be open to meeting you for lunch sometime, maybe after the holidays. The disappointment in his voice was evident, but he accepted my terms. I understand. The offer stands if you change your mind. Thank you, I said, genuinely appreciating his effort even as I protected my hard-won peace. Instead, I spent Christmas Eve at a community concert in town and Christmas Day hiking through the snow-covered woods, finding beauty in the solitude rather than loneliness. I called my father briefly, exchanged stilted text messages with my mother, and ignored Megan's pointed social media posts about family loyalty. As the new year approached, I realized something profound had shifted inside me. The ache of family estrangement was still there, but it no longer defined me. I received an unexpected email from Emily Johnson, the woman who had purchased the farmhouse. Attached were photos of their first Christmas there, the living room decorated with homemade ornaments, their children building a snowman in the front yard, the kitchen table covered in cookie-making supplies. "We wanted you to see how much joy this home continues to bring," Emily wrote, sheltering a family who appreciated it just as Grandma and I had. My difficult decision had allowed the home's legacy to continue through new generations. I printed one photo, their daughter reading in the window seat Grandma had built, and placed it beside Grandma's picture on my mantel. Together, they represented continuity and change, loss and renewal. That evening, I sat on my porch despite the cold, wrapped in one of Grandma's quilts, watching the stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. The path forward wasn't entirely clear, but for the first time in my life, I was walking it on my own terms, guided by my own internal compass rather than others' expectations. "I'm finding my way." "Grandma," I whispered to the night air. "It's not the path I expected, but I think it's the right one." The soft wind through the pines seemed to whisper back, "That's all I ever wanted for you." 1 year after selling the farmhouse, I stood on my cabin porch, coffee in hand, watching the sunrise paint the spring sky in shades of pink and gold. The transformation of the seasons mirrored my own journey, from the barren winter of family conflict to this new season of growth and possibility. My small cabin had become a true home, each corner reflecting my personality in a way my previous apartments never had. The kitchen now boasted open shelving made from reclaimed barnwood, displaying the pottery collection I'd created in my weekly classes. Raised garden beds waited for the heirloom vegetable seeds I'd ordered, with Grandma's gardening journal open on the porch table for reference. Professional changes had accompanied the personal ones. 6 months earlier, I'd taken a risk and accepted a position with a smaller marketing firm that specialized in environmental and community-focused clients. The role offered more creativity and purpose than my previous corporate job, along with the flexibility to work remotely 3 days a week from my cabin. The pay was slightly less, but the satisfaction immeasurably greater, something I could afford thanks to my careful management of the farmhouse proceeds. My financial security, once so precarious, had stabilized. Beyond the cabin purchase and renovations, I'd followed the investment plan I'd created, establishing both retirement accounts and more accessible savings. I'd paid off my student loans in full, a freedom I'd never imagined possible before the age of 40. The charitable foundation I'd established in Grandma's name had funded 3 scholarships for rural students pursuing agricultural and environmental studies, continuing her legacy of stewardship and education. The most complex evolution had been in my family relationships. My father and I had established a new pattern of communication lunch every few weeks at a restaurant midway between our homes, where we talked honestly about everything except my mother and sister. These conversations revealed a man I'd never fully known before, someone with his own regrets and compromises, who found in our renewed relationship a chance for partial redemption. "I've been thinking about getting a workshop space," he mentioned during our most recent lunch. "Something small where I could do woodworking. I always wanted to try that." "You'd be good at it," I encouraged, remembering the detailed birdhouses he'd built when I was very young, before family dynamics overtook his personal interests. "Your mother thinks it's a waste of money," he admitted. "What do you think?" I asked. He considered this, perhaps for the first time. I think I'd like to try anyway. It was a small moment, but significant, a glimpse of him finding his own voice after decades of deferring to my mother's opinions. There was no apology for the farmhouse situation, no acknowledgement of the manipulation or violation of boundaries, just a pragmatic desire to restore a semblance of normalcy. I'd responded with equal care, agreeing to occasional family dinners on the condition that certain topics, including the farmhouse, my finances, and Megan's entitlement, remained off limits. But it was a relationship I could maintain without sacrificing my self-respect. Megan and I had the least contact. Her initial fury had eventually cooled to chilly disdain, especially after she secured a smaller apartment with help from our parents and a personal loan. Our interactions were limited to group settings where we maintained polite facades. Occasionally, I caught glimpses of the sister I'd grown up with, her sharp humor. Some extended family members had taken sides in the conflict, but others had maintained connections with everyone involved, serving as bridges when necessary. Aunt Judith, who had initially pressured me to sell, had surprisingly become an ally after witnessing my mother's continued manipulation firsthand during a holiday gathering. I didn't understand at first. These words from an unexpected source had been healing, validation that I wasn't imagining the dynamics that had shaped my family life. Perhaps the most meaningful connection had come through a letter I received from Mr. Patterson, Grandma's lawyer, 6 months after the sale. "I've debated sharing this with you," he wrote, "but I believe Nora would want you to know. 2 weeks before she passed, she came to update her will, leaving you the farmhouse. When I asked if she wanted to divide her assets differently, she was adamant. Ashley is the only one who sees the value beyond the dollar signs," she told me. "The others would sell it without a second thought. She knew exactly what might happen, Ashley. And she trusted you to make the right decision, whatever that might be. She would be proud of how you've handled this situation with dignity, even when others did not." The letter had brought fresh tears, but also profound peace. Grandma had seen clearly what I'd only begun to understand, that sometimes love means setting boundaries. Now celebrating their first full year in the farmhouse. The photos showed blooming apple trees, children's artwork hung in the kitchen, and a newly established beehive near the wildflower meadow. "We've enclosed something special," Emily wrote. "When clearing some overgrowth behind the old shed, we found these lilac starts that had seeded themselves from the main bush. We thought you might like to plant them at your new place, a living connection between the farmhouse's past and your present." The package arrived 2 days later, 3 healthy lilac shoots carefully wrapped in damp newspaper. I planted them that afternoon along my front walkway, my hands in the soil connecting me to Grandma and the land she loved, while creating roots for my future. Later that week, I visited Grandma's grave, bringing a small bouquet of spring wildflowers gathered from my property. As I sat beside her headstone, I realized I no longer questioned whether I'd made the right choice in selling the farmhouse. The peace I'd found, the growth I'd experienced, and the boundaries I'd established had been necessary for my well-being. "I lost the house," I said aloud, "but I found myself in the process." I felt Grandma's presence not in the granite marker before me, but in the strength I discovered within myself, a strength she had always seen, even when I couldn't. Driving home, I reflected on the lessons of the past year. I'd learned that sometimes protecting yourself looks like selfishness to those who benefited from your sacrifice. That family isn't defined by blood alone, but by respect and mutual care. That standing up for yourself doesn't mean standing alone. That loss can lead to unexpected gifts if you remain open to them. Most importantly, settled in yourself. I considered this. I am. It hasn't been an easy year, but it's been a necessary one. As Ellen left with promises of a weekend hike together, I stayed on the porch watching fireflies begin their evening dance over the meadow. My phone buzzed with a text from my father, a photo of his first woodworking project, a simple but elegant shelf. "Not perfect, but it's a start," his message read. "That's all any of us can do," I texted back. "Just start where we are." Later, preparing for bed, I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror and paused, really seeing myself. The woman looking back at me stood straighter than she had a year ago. Her eyes held confidence along with compassion. She had weathered a storm and emerged stronger, wiser, more authentic. She was, I realized with quiet certainty, exactly who Grandma had always seen in me, waiting to emerge. This journey hadn't ended, family dynamics would continue to evolve, new challenges would arise, and I would make mistakes along the way. But I had found my footing on a path that felt genuinely mine. The house I'd loved was now a cherished memory and a lesson learned. While the life I was building belonged fully to me, constructed with intention, boundaries, and love. As I drifted toward sleep, Grandma's voice seemed to echo in my memory. The hardest cuts often lead to the best fruit. She had been right, as she so often was. In letting go of the farmhouse, I'd created space for something equally valuable to grow. The person I was meant to become. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice that others couldn't understand, but that you knew was right for you? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Sometimes the hardest decisions lead to the most important growth. If this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and give it a thumbs up so others can find it too. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and remember, standing up for yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.